Chase.
Eric, how you doing, buddy?
We still don't know how to start these podcasts.
You just go for it, man.
Go to town. Man, thank you for coming.
Thanks for having us.
ELR. Let's talk about ELR. Let's jump right into that.
Let's do it, man.
Tell me about ELR. I mean, you guys...
We like to waste ammo with 14% hit probability for the win, and everyone else just makes excuses.
What, because you used to shoot PRS, correct?
Sure, yes. I shot actually the very first PRS match ever.
Really? Where
Yes.
was that at?
That was at Kevin Elper's ranch, which we called the Rifle Ranch, near Hillsboro, Texas. And he had an amazing course of fire out there, actually. Very cold, wet, and windy day. And I ended up at 9th place at that match. And I split my my rain gear right down the middle on one of the first stages, so my back was just soaking wet. Just miserable match. A lot of gun failures. That was back when I would bet half the field still shot 308. Wow. Yep. To think of how far we've come in the last, decade of shooting has been pretty exciting to, I wouldn't say I'm in the know of everything, but a lot of the stuff I've been privy to as it's happening. It's really neat.
Yeah. I mean, now 6s are king. Who would have thunk it, right?
I'm telling you. Dude, it's amazing that everybody's gone away from the heavier recoiling stuff, and what's mitigated on barricades. I feel you're going to do a lot better in PRS with that.
Well, not only 6s, but really heavy 6s.
Sure. Exactly. I've been running 115s for a long time. Kind of from first year. That first year I was picked up by GA Precision, and we were kind of developing the 6 Creedmoor at that point. And I went into the PRS finale with 300 points, and I was shooting a 6 Creed with 115 D-Tacs. And Wade Studeville ended up winning that season by about 2 shots on me, but he was shooting a 647. And if I'm recalling correctly, he was shooting a very shot 647 that he was worried about even going to the finale with, and he threw a suppressor on at the last second to get it to behave. And he said no matter what brake he put on, it wouldn't shoot, and he put a suppressor on it, it shot. So that was the only match of the year he shot with a suppressor, and he thumped us all.
Wow. So, good for him.
Yep. He did it when it mattered.
Yeah.
Jeff Badley got 2nd place, beat me by 1 shot, and then I got 3rd on that match and 2nd overall for the season for the first year of the PRS.
That's crazy. Yeah, I had George on the podcast last week.
Okay.
We had a good talk.
Yep.
It was fun.
Yeah. What did y'all discuss?
Well, we talked about GT, obviously.
Yep.
No, we talked about, I don't even know. We just talked about everything, seemed like.
Yeah.
Yeah, he, did you know he started in F class?
Did he? Okay. Yeah, he failed to mention that back in the day.
He's probably a little ashamed of it.
What's funny is Derek is about to start shooting F class with y'all.
Oh, so man, that's going to be fun.
That's going to be interesting. So I know.
We kind of ruined Derek a little bit. No, we didn't. Come on, Derek. Just jump in. The water's warm.
Yeah, he won't jump into that ELR pool. That water's a little too cold for him.
Oh, come on. So ELR. When do you start shooting ELR, and why?
Honestly,
why is probably the biggest question.
My eyesight, I think, is one of my reasons I got into ELR. From the time I was able to shoot a BB gun, I was shooting BBs down our driveway growing up in Weatherford, and I was shooting them 100+ yards, and I can watch the BB fly all the way through the air. So I have better than 20/10 in both eyes. And for some reason, my deal was, as soon as I got a rifle when I was a kid, is how far could I shoot it to where it wouldn't be consistent anymore. Not knowing what I was doing, I was just Kentucky holding further and further, and I knew if I could pick a certain tree limb, and I was still, I was just shooting at old pieces of like tractor plates, the weights that go on the front of a tractor. I'd set one of those up, and we'd be shooting 500 yards, not having a clue what we were doing, but hey, it's consistently hitting that thing out there.
Yeah,
we thought that was something back then. And in middle school, I saw some documentary on Marine snipers, and those guys were calculating how they hit, and I was like, I got to teach myself that. And I ended up teaching myself off of David Tubbs' old VHS tapes, and he had just enough breadcrumbs in there to kind of help me figure my, my data out. And the first custom rifle I ever built was in high school, and the first thing I did is like, I want to go shoot this thing at a mile. And it was don't laugh too hard. It was a custom built 257 Weatherby. That's what my dad had grown me up on, and I just rebarreled one that I already had and put a nice. Believe I put a shilling on that one, and it shot really good. Like it shot real well. And those cheap chronographs that they had back in the early 2000s, as bad as those.
Did you have the ones that would fold up?
Oh, I did. The old Beta Crony. Exactly, the blue one.
I shot one.
You physically shot?
I physically shot.
That's probably the best thing you ever did with that thing.
No lie.
Yeah, but
made it work better.
Yeah, it probably was.
Made it more consistent.
Yeah, yeah. I think we all started out. That's just all there was back then, really. I mean, the ELR had some stuff, but you just heard about them.
Exactly.
You didn't know where to get it. You just heard about, man, that's expensive. And but. Immediately, we shot a mile with that 257, and I was shooting a 115 burger, and it's like, let's just shoot it until we run out of scope, and quickly realized like I need more scope. So I bought a Leopold Mark IV 16 Ultra. They had 150 MOA of vertical, which was unheard of back then, and the regular Mark IV had 100 minutes in it, and this one had 150. And called Richard Neer up in Canada. I saw you use his rings on your F-class guns, and I said, hey, here's what I need. He was like, what? He goes, you're stupid. He goes, how far are you wanting to shoot? And I was like, well, 2000 is pretty consistent. I'm about to build a 338 Norma. I want to go as far as we can go. And he goes, okay, and he builds a set of rings. So it gave me all of my elevation with 100 yard zero and all 150 minutes.
Wow.
And we maxed it out, and then we're holding in the reticle. And I don't remember roughly how far, but it was pushing 3,000 yards back in the early 2000s when I was in high school. We got some old footage through a Swarovski spot and scope with my dad's trying to hold the camera, and I'd shoot, and then all of a sudden you'd see the bullet hit the target out there. But yeah, the
young people don't really understand.
Oh, they don't
said
know.
Hold the camera. they don't even know what this means.
Yeah, now they got digiscoping, and every phone has a perfect modified.
Cameras were this big.
Oh my gosh.
Look up VHS tape.
That's literally, my dad had it on his shoulder. And
I know.
Holding it into the spot and scope like that is great.
So now you're shooting 3,000 yards.
Sure.
What was the benefit? Benefit's not the right word. What made you want to do that? Because that's
my mindset has
crazy.
Like, I've never been good with like kind of just being okay. My mindset is like, if you're going to do this, push the limits and be as good as you can be. And it's just the way my brain works. And, okay, we hit consistent here. Let's move back further. All right. Well, we got to a point where we immediately would just max out a cartridge, a projectile, whatever we're testing. And we're getting consistency out there. But 2,500, and occasionally, we get a spot where we could go find to shoot 3,000 yards. We could go do it. And we're like, well, optics are a limiting factor here. And then fast forward to, I forget the exact year, and John Baker comes out to Charlie Tarak. Lauren, you want to?
All right. You're going too fast for me, man. All right, I'm going to slow you down.
Okay, you're going to slow me down.
All right. So you said you were maxing out the optics. That's pretty simple, right? You run out of elevation.
That's right.
But you also said you were maxing out the cartridge. What does that mean?
Well, no, let's say we get a new bullet. Let's go see how far we can shoot this new projectile design. Right. Does it fall apart at a certain distance, or are we still consistent where we max out a scope and we hold over and we're just out of everything. And, we'd find quickly that, this projectile is good for about, 15, 20% after it went transonic, subsonic. But it starts to get squirrely, a lot of vertical out there. And then, the first iteration of the 300 grain Burger Hybrid, their 338 projectile, man, that bullet was awesome. And it was just thin enough jacketed, though, that if you shot it with Kirby Allen, I'm sure you know who Kirby is, his 338 Allen mag. I was hearing online, some guys were unraveling that bullet. Well, that bullet goes off the market, comes back reinvented. It's got a thicker, heavier jacket on it. Bullet's a little bit lower BC on it, but it was as good as a projectile you could get back in the day for consistency in shooting.
What bullet was that?
There's a 300 grain Burger hybrid.
Okay.
And now they have an Elite Hunter, and then they've got the tactical and the hybrid, and slightly different BC between those, but mostly just jacket thicknesses and other minor design changes. And they have their applications for military hunting and then your target shooters. And man, I've shot that bullet a long way. We've shot that bullet at 3 miles with really good consistency. So.
What do you mean by consistency? You have to understand.
Correct. I have to scale everything back. So just so people understand, in the ELR community, the 36-inch plate is kind of our standard size target. So, for example, let's say we shoot a cold bore at an ELR match. We might be shooting a full 36-inch plate, but we also might be shooting a 1 minute or smaller, just depending on that match, the match director, and how they're setting it up. A lot of the times, there's a match up there near Weatherford called the Castle Match that Jay Monich runs, and it's got a pretty small cold bore in it. If I'm not, was that like a 12-inch? It's like a 12 or a 16-inch cold bore at over 1,500 yards. I mean, that's a salty target. And, let's say there's 80 to 100 shooters at a match. That thing usually only gets hit 2 or 3 times.
Wow.
So it's, of course, the wind's always blowing pretty good, and it's just challenging. And then we would transition from whatever your cold bore size target is. Typically, you're going to shoot at 36-inch plates from 1,500 yards, which is the starting point of where our matches begin. And, they can go out. I think Justin Wolf up in Kansas has pushed them out to over 4,200 yards. I know, was it 3 people have hit over 4,000 yards? Ryan Cheney, Kenny, K&P Barrels, and who else did it? Who was the first one to do it? I think Ryan was the first to crack 4,000, and then 2 people did it in one match. Either way, doesn't matter.
It probably does.
Well, yeah, I know it matters. What's his name? With Manners, Robert Brantley.
Right. Robert. Okay.
Robert and Kenny hit it in the same match. And if I'm not mistaken, they kind of hit it really close to each other in terms of time. It was a real windy day, and just seeing the flashers go off way out there, it's, it's pretty cool to see that happening on the clock. It doesn't happen a lot. And now, it's back in the day where one person was maybe hitting the 2 mile targets in matches one time. Last time we were up in Kansas, I believe there was over 30 impacts on the 2 mile target. So it's gone a long way. That's
one thing that George Gardner told me. He said that at a certain match, I don't know if it was you or Robert that he made a bet against, that it's probably Robert, that he bet that nobody was going to hit the 2 mile target. And he said nobody did. And he goes, now they hit it like all the time.
That was probably, it might have been World's Longest Shot or something back when this was kind of first getting popular and getting kicked off. I know I was calling wind for Mitchell Fitzpatrick, my teammate at Applied Ballistics, and he became the first person to hit 2 miles in a match on the clock. And the flasher, oddly enough, it went off 3 times, but there was only 1 impact on the target. So, we don't know what happened there. For sure, 1 impact on the target, hit the top left corner up there. And then I think it was probably a dozen matches or so with a 2 mile target available. But Mitch, it took a long time for someone to actually make it work on the clock. And
that's a long poke, dude.
It is. It's about a 7 to 8 second time of flight, depending on what cartridge you're shooting, and a lot of the guys are starting to shoot the big 416s now. There's, of course, the Barrett's been around. There's always been some brass issues with that. And I've never really built one of the big cartridges. The 375 Enabler is the biggest I've had yet. And then,
but that's small in ELR world.
It really is. This is like a 6BR for ELR. That's what I would compare that to. And it's a big cartridge.
It's freaking massive. Put it right next to your Kestrel so people can see.
Yeah. So
look at that. And that is considered a small.
And yeah, it is. I mean, it's cartridge. A 4.315 overall length. We run about a 15 thousandths jam on this projectile. And then, so we're, 4.3 essentially to the lands. And, these things put off a lot of energy. You know, I've hunted with this stuff. I've got a video on YouTube. I've got a 1,002-yard headshot on a doe with this cartridge back when we were doing the initial military testing. This was exactly how a military rifle was set up and made it work out in the field. In fact, I shot it right down the road in Pleasanton.
Wow.
When I was in the oil field. So, but this is very small compared to what a lot of the guys are running. I run about 100 and...
That's what she said.
Cut to the wife.
Sorry.
I know, that was low hanging fruit. You had to knock that
right
one down.
there. Sorry.
You know, we run around 130 grains of powder, and depending on what powder you're running and your barrel length and, you know, projectile. And I think, you know, that 416 Hellfire that was extremely popular did really good this year. I did load development on 4 or 5 different clients' rifles with that. And, you know, we were running like 163 grains of 8133 with a 550, shooting them at like 3170.
How many grains?
550 grain projectile at 3,170 feet a second. And that's 163 grains of...
163. Holy shit.
Yeah. That's a lot of powder.
That's a lot of powder.
You know, the Barretts are around 185 grains of, you know, 20 and 29, you know, thereabouts. And that, man, that gets expensive to miss. You know, that's why if you do the math, even to hit, you're right. You know, it's hard to go quantify practice. That's why, you know, we've got a couple of 300 Normas we'll go practice with here and there. But, you know, keeping these things tuned is, you know, somewhat easy. The Enabler is pretty forgiving in terms of, you know, some of the rounds that I've tried to tune and keep in tune shooting these solids. They're a lot more picky than a traditional lead core projectile.
So Paul Phillips, he was telling me that, you know, 416 is the way to go. Obviously, I'm sure you don't believe that, or maybe you do, you just don't. I don't know. The point is, he's saying that's the way to go. Is that where everybody's going, or is that just...
Let me say this. If you're strictly only competing and you don't have anything else you're doing, so we do a lot of entertainment packages at my company where we'll take people out and get them on at 1.5, and 2 miles. And, you know, and they just want to go out and experience what ELR is. Mm-hmm. We shoot a bunch.
I see.
So if you run your BC and velocity on this against a 416 of some sort, it's not far enough behind to where we think it's worth another $6 a trigger pull.
I see.
This is close enough. We've had 100% success rate at 2 miles. Like, the only, I will put an asterisk by that, we've had some clients come in that had under twisted barrels, and as soon as their projectile went transonic, it was no longer predictable. You know, yes, those guys did not succeed at 2 miles, but we put them on my rifle, and we've had nothing but success. So, best bang for the buck. This is one of the best cartridges out there. You've got
let me see that.
You've got an over 500 G7 at over 2,900 feet a second.
That's crazy.
And
this is a small one, right?
Yeah,
this is one of the small ones in the game.
It is. In my light division ELR gun, I just have a 338 enabler because that's 338 smaller, 26 pounds or lighter, and I can just swap my 338 enabler barrel straight on and we're off to the races, and I can shoot. I've got David Tubbs' new 338 DTAC bullet, and it's, you know, you can shoot that thing 3,500 feet a second if you wanted to. The 338 enabler it's pretty flat. I mean, you know, a lot of the 6 mils are kind of in that 7 to 7.5 mils of vertical to 1,000. The 338, well, granted, this is the 375 iteration of it. These are like 5.2 mils at 1,000. The 338's like 4.1.
That is flat.
It is unbelievable.
My 647, my 647 is pretty flat, and it's like 7.
Right. That's what my 6XC is. It's exactly 7 mils to 1,000. Yeah. And but yeah, these other cartridges, and these things are nice, you know. And of course, my rifle's over there on the floor, and we can set it up here if we need to. But I've got that bipod extender out on the front of it. Mm-hmm. You can move your bipod feet like.
Yeah, I've seen that.
You can move that thing 2 feet longer than where you'd normally put your bipod foot. So your footprint getting moved out forward like that, your recoil impulse is like cut by 80%. I mean, I don't even put my chassis against my shoulder. I have 100% free recoil my gun now. I let the bag rider and the bipod leg.
You free recoil at 375?
And I can, my crosshair goes about 0.5 mil off the target with that bipod extender.
Wow. Let's see that thing. All right.
He did 375 this one.
There's not even any room to... Here, I'm gonna have to back this thing way off.
I can shorten this.
2 mile. We weren't that much different, were we, on everything?
On our.
I don't even have enough. The camera's all the way, and I can barely see
might
from.
have to just stand it up in the corner right here. And
There you go.
The thing.
Yeah, do you want
If
me
it's
to
right there.
stand up like right here with it?
Whatever you want. I'm recording right now.
So,
People
okay.
need to
So
see this.
Just for you to experience this, to understand, it would almost be better. It would almost be better if you came over here and picked the back of the rifle up while I move this thing, and you feel the weight difference in the footprint being spread out through the entire length of the rifle versus normally back over here.
Holy smokes. That thing is... Okay, how long is that barrel?
So this used to be a 40-inch barrel. Normally, you know, they'll have that pre-cut line out here that, hey, make sure you cut here.
Yeah.
You're not having any tooling issues out on the end. Well, that was done. Apparently, that wasn't enough. There was still more tooling issues. So we ended up cutting it back again, trying to diagnose this thing. And it's ended up at 36.5 inches, but it actually shoots extremely, extremely well. Lauren's got a 40-inch on hers. We're running K&P 7 twists. And I'm not, you know, Kenny makes great barrels. I've got a couple of Bart lines also that just shoot unbelievable. And you have to be, you know, a little more, you have to cull a little bit more when it comes to getting barrels for shooting lathe turn solids. Not every type of rifling works well. I'm not going to name names, but there's certain barrel manufacturers out there. I've just never been able to ever get to shoot lathe turn solids. You know, like we expect a certain type of precision, and then, you know, you end up doubling and tripling that. No matter what you do, they just won't work. And it more and more, it seems like the rifling profile is kind of the culprit, because you can shoot traditional bullets in it, it shoots fine. You go to shoot solids, and it's just all over the place.
So that bipod extender.
Yep.
That thing, what it does, what does it do?
Okay.
So I mean,
you can move your. Normally, we would have a bipod attached out here on the front of our Picatinny rail. Okay. So yeah, we'd normally be attached here. You put this device on.
Here, let me try to get.
You put this device on.
We're getting there.
Patient, everybody.
Holy crap. All right.
So-
I think we're there.
All right. So now you go to pick up on this thing. You can feel it back here. And now let's move our bipod out further,
Holy
which
crap.
I normally will keep it right about right here.
Yeah, because I mean, you don't want to get it too long, right?
Right. You'll end up.
It's
Lauren's
funny.
right over her head. But yeah, if you get this thing extended too much, I believe you can get a little more rebound effect than necessary. But it's necessary sometimes to make it longer, depending on what weapon system you run it on. You know, and I can undo this again.
Holy
Just
crap.
keep moving it further out. I mean, the footprint between the bipod and where your rear.
Yeah, I mean, this tape was like 8 feet long, and you already took up all of it.
I mean, this thing is almost 6 foot from
Yeah.
bipod to
the back of the rifle.
to the back of the rifle back here. So, and it makes the weight of the rifle, it makes it feel like it weighs over double of what it really does.
Yeah, because it's changing the center of gravity.
Correct. You know, and you're hard pressed to go to an ELR match and not see one of these on a rifle now. Almost everybody runs them.
That's so crazy.
Because it helps you can spot yourself so much easier. But again, with this thing on there, my rifle, half a mil.
Here's the crazy. I would have never thought about anything like that. You know what I mean? Just because, why would I? Why would I even consider that?
Sure. You know, and that's one of those deals. I'm surprised. I don't know if it's not allowed. In F-class, obviously, y'all have specialized rests on your forends up there that help you track perfectly.
Well, I should open.
So you could put something like that.
The TR guys could probably use that.
Yeah, that's a good point. You know, and I've got my magneto speed up here. So, you know, if you want to data log every shot in a match to know whether, hey, do I need to chase that vertical or not?
Do you keep that on all the time?
On this thing, it's just too easy to keep it right there. So, yes, I do keep it on all the time.
It's so crazy.
So, but this device, I'm telling you, it's made a big difference in the way we shoot. We can get off the gun, let the gun do the work instead of the human element doing a lot of the rear bag manipulation. Now you can just let the the bag rider,
That's just so crazy.
do all the weight, move your vertical where you want it, and just touch the trigger.
I keep laughing because it's so crazy.
It is. It is very different.
I've never seen anything like this.
You know, and I'm sure I'm going to get you to come out and shoot ELR with me before too long. And we've got that real good spot.
I keep being asked. So Paul's going to be here next week.
Okay.
Robert from Alamo is going to be here.
Okay.
Ray's going to be here.
Okay.
So I'm probably going to, and Brian's going to be here. So I'm probably going to do a ELR roundtable or just a season, I guess. They're not all going to be here at the same time, but
sure,
you're kicking it off. You're kicking off the whole ELR.
So those of y'all that don't know,
Shark Week.
Yeah, those of y'all that don't know, Paul Phillips is a King of 2 Mile winner. Ray, you know, she's one of the best female shooters, precision rifle shooters in the world, really. Brian Litz, of course, the head of AB. And who else did you say?
Robert from Alamo Precision.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Robert Wagner. He's a phenomenal gunsmith. He actually did my 338 enabler for me. So
yeah, I mean, it's I need to reach out over to the Sterling Precision.
Yep, you can get Adam Bussey.
Yeah, I know him. I met him at these shoots over here.
Yeah, Adam's a good guy. He's got a lot of irons
on here.
Yeah, he's got a lot of irons in the fire. Jesse Cook would be good to speak on their behalf. He was working for them for a while, shoots for them.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's
and they've got the 416 stroker.
Stroker,
which is just
what is David Park? I'm also trying to get David Park on here.
Yeah.
What does he have? He's building a 416. God, what is it? Maybe I shouldn't tell you.
Well, I know several 416 cartridges come down the pipeline right now, and this is one of those deals where we probably ought to not say certain numbers with certain words behind them.
All right.
Just to.
God dang, you guys are worse than us. So anyway, David Park, I was talking to him, and he's building some kind of 416, and it's not just a regular 416. It had a different name attached to it, so I'm assuming it's some kind of fancy schmancy, gets you an extra 10 yards.
Yeah,
I don't know.
And Robert Vestal's got the 416 Valor coming out, and it actually outperforms the Hellfire. And he's got a 458 Valor.
Hellfire.
The Hellfire's been out for a couple of years now, and Bertram brass is the only brass source available. So, in these other brass manufacturers that make extremely high quality brass, if you're not spitting out unbelievable numbers of production, then they kind of kick you down the road and be like, no, we don't want to make a cartridge that we're only going to sell 14,000 pieces of brass on.
I would imagine.
So,
so what does Paul shoot?
Paul has been shooting the 416 Barrett,
the Barrett
to my knowledge.
Version. Because he was saying, last time he was on, he said he was shooting brass that was actually late turn, the whole.
Right. So that's one of the issues that they've been finding with the Barrett brass is inconsistency in brass thickness. And again, I don't want to name names on who's doing his brass work for him, but I know they've figured out one of the main reasons why they can't get brass to resize. And they finally got that box checked. And I think they've been making pretty consistent brass, but it's unbelievably expensive, like almost $20 a piece. So,
yeah, that's what he said.
Yeah, it's like $18 a pop. So that's been one of the biggest reasons I haven't gone down that 416 road is, yes, they do shoot pretty good, but when you run the BC and the velocity, it's not that much better than the enabler or any of the other 375s that are out there for that matter. So yeah, I want to, if I'm going to build something, I'll probably end up doing like one of those 458 Valors. You can run a 675 grain bullet, 3,200 feet a second with an off the charts BC. And it's one of those longer, thinner cartridges like the Hellfire. It's not as big around it's not a 50 caliber bolt face. It's a standard 640, what we call the Shy-Tac bolt face. And it's just longer, and for some reason, the powder burn on those longer, thinner cartridges like that, for some reason, has a lot of consistency behind it. Like the tub, the 33XC versus the 338 enabler, for some reason, the 33XC is just stupid easy to reload for. And I have to do a little bit of work on the 338 enabler. You know, that board cartridge diameter is considerably different on the enabler versus the XC. But 33XC almost took a clean sweep on the top 20 for King of 1 Mile this year. I think there was only like 2 cartridges that weren't in the top 20 shooting. So that cartridge is really, really doing well in the light division stuff. And heck, even in open division, Tubb had set the original, that was his son-in-law, Nate. He set with the 37, and then later with the 33XC, they set the initial ELR world record. So cold bore, 3 for 3, no warm-ups on the day. Those were the first 3 trigger pulls on that rifle, and it held the records there for a little bit.
All right, how do you set a record?
I think there's more than one sanctioning body now for ELR records, but they still have the same pretty much rule: 36-inch plate, no matter what. 3 for 3.
So no matter the distance.
No matter the distance.
Okay.
3 for 3, and you have to hit the first 3 shots. If you miss one,
cold bore,
cold bore, and 2 shots after that. And honestly, I don't even know what the distance records are. They're over 2,700 yards, if I'm not mistaken. So there's one.
Isn't it like 4,000 yards or something? I saw online.
Oh gosh.
What's that? Oh gosh.
No,
No,
nobody's gone through.
Explain the oh gosh.
I just assume you meant the guys.
It took them like 69 shots to hit it.
Yeah, see, okay, those aren't world records. That is a personal best for that guy. If you're not in a sanctioned match, like, do you set world records when you're practicing?
I try to.
No, but
you can't.
It doesn't count for anything. You know,
no, it doesn't count.
Right. So if it's not in a sanctioned competition, it's not a record. It's just that guy shot further than anyone else within 69 shots that day on that property. But it was like it was 7,000.
Okay, 7,000.
Something yards, because Bill Poor came up with me. I got him on at 71.51 a couple of years ago. So to shoot a 10-shot string, it almost took an hour.
Why?
Well, you have a 22-second time of flight for starters.
Okay.
And then we're doing a lot of waiting for the wind to be the exact same for every shot. You know, I learned a lot. So there's actually a lot to learn when you're shooting those kind of distances, and if you can have someone that's good enough behind a rifle to actually fundamentally make good trigger pulls, use a wind reader or a spotter you can do yourself a lot of good by seeing what's happening with what you're predicting versus where the bullet lands. And it was kind of coming down to a mile an hour here. You can look at, there's an app called, I'm sure you know about Vintusky. So it's an app that you can read wind at different altitudes, real time. And, if you look at 100 meters in the air, what's that wind doing versus wind at the ground? And, it goes all the way up to like 30,000.
Yeah, because you guys are like lobbing them way up there.
Your
right?
max ord, Lauren, my wife, she became the first female to hit 3 miles. And if I'm not mistaken, that was her max ord was like 900 something yards above line of sight. So to put that into perspective, everybody, if F-class shoots 1,000 yards, her projectile was almost going that far above line of sight. It was a 14-second time of flight. But, those guys that just hit 7,400 something, whatever it was up there in Wyoming, they had a huge altitude advantage, but the laws of probability is you just keep shooting at something like that, you're probably going to hit it. When Bill hit 71.51, he shot 10 shots. It took about an hour. We shut him down. I made him wait. Rusty Newton took a few shots. Then I ended up going down range, which took me like 25 minutes on a caliche road to drive straight to the target. We had some AR-500 shields that we had built so you could have forward observers down there and kind of help quadrate where the bullets were landing. And then Bill's first shot on his second string I was about 150 yards to the left of the target, and that shot hit in the tree right above me. And I said, "Okay, Bill, use your reticle. You see my hidey hole that I'm hiding behind?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "You hit directly above me about, 15 feet in the tree." I said, "Move to the right. that exact distance and you'll be right on wind. And I get off the radio, wait, I hear the shots over the radio. 20 seconds later, and he was hitting all around the target. And I couldn't believe, well, and again, consistency at those kind of distances is like, if you can hit within like 20 yards, you're doing really good at 4 miles. And every one of them were hitting in the same spot. And on his 8th one, he hit it right through the top. And we're at 150 feet above sea level on our altitude. So it's not like we have a big advantage. Our station pressure was like 2980 something.
All right. I'm in my head. I'm trying to do math, and it's not working out. It's too much.
Well, I keep a Kestrel on my hip, and then I've got my Garmin on right now.
All right. Here's the question that I have. Like, immediately when you said it was off the target. So, for example, you're shooting 4,000 yards.
Okay.
What's one MOA at that distance?
Just over 40 inches. So
that's it?
So if you do 40 times 1.047, that's your minute of angle right there. So you're going to be around a 42.
That's it?
That's it.
Yeah, it's okay.
So the minute of angle is pretty small. So when Bill shot his...
Yeah, like I said, I'm trying to do math, and somehow...
It was under a minute and a half.
Here's the problem with my
door, but
why the math wasn't computing, because I'm like, 40, no, that can't be it. It's so far. But yeah, it is. I mean, okay, so I guess the question that I had for you was, because in F-class, right, if we shoot to the right, we move over to the left.
Sure.
Right? But when you're shooting that far out, I mean, what's your expected group size?
Your cone of accuracy. All
right, your cone of accuracy. At what point do you go, just hold the same? It's just
so that's a really good question.
Probability, and we're going to hit it because
there's some testing that we've done this last year, and you almost have to go to where your guns, and like this rifle, for example. I have hit 5 in a row at 2 miles with this rifle on this barrel, as a matter of fact. And, and then you go back with the same ammo, the next week, you've cleaned your barrel to your normal cleaning regimen, and you come back out and you just can't hit anything for some reason, and it's like, what, there's a factor going on out there. Like, why was I so good that one day and now this day's not so good? Is it temperature? Is it powder instability? There's still a lot of things to be figured out, and, we're ever evolving, and I've gone away from the slower burning powders. I've actually running Retumbo in this thing, believe it or not. I found that running a smaller volume of Retumbo in this cartridge, and just slowing the gun down a little bit, it's capable of shooting 3,000 feet a second, but I run it at 2910 just because that's where it's the most consistent SDs and, groupings. It seems to do a lot better vertically if you slow it down a little bit out there. And, you designed me on my 338 enabler barrel. I've got your tuner brake on here.
No, I didn't.
And well, if you'd make one physically large enough for a bullet to go through, I'd have it on here. But I just
that was an experimental one,
and it worked. It's on that enabler. Well, this KDEX brake, you can just break that timer loose, and you can run it out of rev. It's very crude, but still usable.
You're still shifting it.
Sure. And we went out in one of those days where, like, why is my gun just not shooting good? And it's, a little bit warmer day, and I ran it out of rev, and my water line just got a lot happier out there at 2,000 yards.
Do you still shoot for applied?
Yes. Just ask. I already know you're going to.
Well, because you said, move it out just like a tuner. And I'm like, anyway,
let's cut the crap. Just ask me.
Brian's going to be here.
Of course,
I'll talk to Brian about tuners.
Okay.
It's just.
Well, you can talk to me about tuners too, buddy.
Well, we could. Okay, we'll talk about tuners because I know
we'll get to them.
When we get into the rimfire stuff, because I know you use the crap out of them. We're gonna get into the rimfire.
I shoot as much rimfire as probably anybody.
Yeah, right now it just like
it's not.
You and Brian must have some really fun conversations, which I hope him and I are gonna have one. I know he's a good guy, so it'll be fun. So anyway, you crudely back it out and use it as a tuner. Now, at what point are you happy with? At what distance do you work up a load for this thing?
I will usually do it. Usually I don't see a difference in tuning a gun at 1,500 yards versus, I need to go to Mach 1.2, which is where we true our muzzle velocity. That's the furthest distance you can reliably, if you need to tune your muzzle velocity, or true your muzzle velocity, I should say. I usually do right in the 1,500 yard range. You know, it's gonna rear its ugly head. I do all my initial development on paper. I do a lot of paper shooting with this thing, believe it or not.
At what distance? 1,500?
No, at 100 yards on paper. So I still have a 100-yard zero on this rifle. I don't run a mechanical offset of, oh, I'm 5 mils high at 100, and then, no. The way the Mark V scopes work, where you set your zero stop, you get all 30 mils of dialable elevation, and then you can use your reticle if you want, or put a elevation device in front of your scope, like a Charlie or a wedge. And I do everything on paper at 100 yards, and then we'll go over the 500-yard range, make sure it's still kind of shooting.
Happy.
You know, if it's shooting under 2 inches of vertical at 500 yards, then I'll probably go out in the field and shoot at distance. And this gun has shot, I don't know how many half MOA groups at a mile, untold amounts.
Wow.
You know, I've had barrels that the barrel that's on here is, I would say it's exceptionally accurate, and it's got some rounds on it. You know, it's got 1,500 rounds on it.
That was my next question. What's the barrel life on these things?
I probably run barrels longer than most people do because, again, we're going out and taking people out, and I expect a gun to shoot a minute and a half of vertical at 2 miles under any condition. All things factored in, this thing is easily capable of shooting. I shot a 7-inch vertical group at 2 miles with this thing before. You know, unbelievable precision. It was 30-inch wide, 7 inches tall, and it was a pretty windy day. The other day we went out with this thing, 4,002 yards, second round impact, and 32 mile an hour winds from 230. We're holding 13.4 mils of wind.
All right. All right. I'm gonna have to stop you again. Seriously, you saying all these things, and I'm trying to compute, and it's just the wires are crossing. Okay. All right. 30 mile an hour winds. How far?
4,002 yards.
You gotta get the 2 right.
Well, if you run the math on 4,000 versus 4,002,
okay, that's where I'm going with this.
That's
where I'm going with this. Okay, walk me through that shot. Like,
okay, so
walk me through the whole thing.
We'll walk through the setup. All right. So rained a bunch. Had a client come in, and he was doing an ELR class with me. He had just got a brand new KDEX factory 375 enabler. The roads were so muddy out in the field, we could only go to the firing line into a caliche road that crossed the field out in the middle. It's way too muddy to get off of that. So I was like, well, unfortunately, we are only going to shoot, you know, around 4,000 yards today. He goes, oh man, you know, the furthest he had ever shot was the day before at a mile. So we get out there, and it was right when a front was hitting. What was that, like 3 or 4 weeks ago? And real nice morning. I mean, the winds were like 2 to 4 miles an hour, just real pleasant, calm. And then about 10:30 in the morning, that front hits, and the wind starts blowing in. We're facing west, so when the wind were kind of coming in from 10 o'clock to start, they went around to a headwind, and then they start coming in at 1 o'clock, and it's blowing, you know, kind of 20, 25. And I get my client set up on his rifle. I go down range. I get about 200 yards off to the side, and I'm forward observing because it's so muddy we aren't going to see plumes of dust out there. And this is a big, giant plowed field. So, I mean, no kidding, from 3 miles, if it's dry enough, you can see the bullet splash with your naked eye at 3 miles. And it's really, really optimal.
Yeah, it's a big rock that you guys
Sure, you're shooting a 407 grain projectile out there. But we set him up. I kid you not, we could have had a cold bore with him. He got all excited just because of how far we're shooting. He puts my Charlie on his rail in front of his scope. Well, he forgets to dial up the true elevation. So he had his Kestrel locked from the day before. So
all right. There's some details that we're missing here. How do you even range it accurately to within 2 miles? Let's start with that.
Are you on pause right now, or are we recording still?
Oh, we're recording, buddy.
Okay.
You want me to pause it? I can pause it.
Pause
we're
it
gonna
right
pause
quick.
it.
Hit pause.
All right. So
to know how far
really
we're shooting, I actually use a 3-way approach. So I've got a really good rangefinder. We'll just leave that at that. The Garmin watch, you can drop a pin on your target, and then it knows exactly how far you are.
Okay, like the geoballistics app.
I've never used that one, but probably similar.
Yeah, it has the Google Map thing. Okay.
Yeah, and then we use Google Earth on top. So you're using basically 2 points of reference. Well, three. As long as two of the three match up real close, that rangefinder is usually the most accurate of the three. And so
which
we know
one's the most accurate?
the rangefinder that I have is the most accurate of the three that I've found. It will
so
coincide with my ballistic data.
I was going to say, so it's one of those things that it just comes down to experience, right? You try all three, and then you see, okay, time and time again, the rangefinder is the better one.
Google Earth is the cheapest results, you know, and then the Garmin watch can be finicky depending on how much ferrous metal you're around, and because they have such a nice compass in them. It can kind of throw off of where it thinks you're pointing these things.
I see.
So in my trailer, unfortunately, is a lot of, you know, the second story platform on it. It's a lot of ferrous metal in it. It can make it think it's 10 yards in whatever direction. So the rangefinder is typically the best option. So we know exactly how far we are.
So first, that's got to take some time.
Just to set targets up.
I was going to say.
I mean, just to go put out one target at 4,000 yards, I mean, that's a half hour. Just to
well, I'm going to say, once the target's there, for you to even just get the range.
Yep.
10, 15-minute ordeal.
Right, because when we go to the trailer to set up, that's where you have to take your original reading with the Garmin watch and then drop your pin with Google, and then you go out to wherever you want and then make sure those 2 points are still there. And then I've got a reflector on my trailer.
I was going to ask.
Just
so you
zap
go
it
to
with
the
rangefinder
target
and
and then
picks it
range
up
back
instantly, you know.
Okay.
Instantaneous read. And it's very, very accurate. So at that point, we'll pull up good old trusty Kestrel. And on my Kestrel, the way I do it is I will have a profile that's my 100-yard zero. And I use it out until about 35 to 40 mils. So I'll dial up 30 and it can hold 10 mils and still be on full zoom. When we need to shoot further than that, that's around 2,700 yards, depending on density, altitude, and whatnot. At that point, I have a second profile in my, I'll go down to my gun, and I've got a profile with my Charlie Terac data. So when I put on my Charlie Terac, still...
Do you have that here?
I sure do.
Let's see.
Yeah, let's look at that.
While she gets that for you, can you tell us the barrel life? I don't think we ever got to that.
Yeah, so on barrel life, I usually run these things a little bit longer than what most people do. I'm averaging around 3,000.
Wow.
On the enabler, and again, I don't lean on them that hard.
Shit, you almost can't afford not to shoot it.
Pretty much. You're telling me, buddy. I don't have any experience with the 416 Barrett. So I couldn't tell you barrel life on those. I've had Shy Tacs before. Those were kind of about 2,000 rounds, and they were, you know, the fire cracking was bad enough to where, you know, if you look down there with your bore scope, you just kind of winced a little bit, and you're like, we better stay ahead of this. Yeah. So for some reason, though, the enabler doesn't fire crack near as bad, and I don't know if it's the type of powder that we run versus most everybody runs H50 BMG in the Shy Tac or the 9.5x77, whatever you want to call it these days. Yeah. And then the beauty of the enabler being a little bit shorter, you can run a multitude of powders. I like Reloader 33. It's extremely, extremely good. And that cartridge, Retumbo, we're finding it's really well. 24N41 is really good. N570, very dirty powder, as you probably know.
Have you shot? Well, I've never shot that. Okay. Have you shot 165, or is it too fast?
Way too fast. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So 565 is probably going to be right on
the low end as far as
it's
fast
burn rate. Yeah, it's about the fastest burn rate powder you want to run. So, but yeah, 3,000. Lauren's her last 40-inch barrel. We actually leaned on that one. It is a faster barrel. We shot it at like 3050 to 3070, which is considerably faster than what we intended that cartridge to really be running in a 26-inch field rifle. But in a 40-inch, we got 1,500 rounds out of it, and it was done. So we pulled it. She's got a new one on now, and then this is my 7th barrel, if I'm not mistaken, with this cartridge. And it's got, 1,500 rounds on it. I'd have to look at my primer box count to know exactly, but it's just over 1,000.
Wow.
So, and again, we, AB's got all their Doppler radar data, and, cleaning these things, I know y'all talk about cleaning all the time on here, and it's not stressed enough. I don't think it is. Like, the way you maintenance these lathe turn barrels versus a traditional swage barrel. I don't know how often you take your barrel down to bare metal.
Every time.
Every time. Okay, same here.
I tell people, treat them like your ass. If you use it, clean it.
Couldn't said it better. You keep patching until there's nothing on the patch.
No, I'm talking about it. You know,
I know,
if we go out and we shoot
sure.
it 10 times, every time it comes, you went to my shop. We got
Sure.
the picnic table with those cradles.
Absolutely.
If it's on that cradle, it needs to be cleaned. Once it gets clean, it gets put away and it's ready to shoot again. It never gets put away without cleaning, and it doesn't matter if it's 10 or 15 or 50 shots, because if we don't clean it, if we shoot 10 shots and we don't clean them, the next time it's like, how many did we shoot? Do we need to clean it? No, just that decision
Have
doesn't.
it to the same.
Yeah, it just needs to be
time.
cleaned. And guess what? When you only shot 10 shots, it's faster. So
Sure.
just go and clean it out and bore scope and make sure it's good. And because anyway, so yeah,
So
we clean a lot.
Right, and a lot of the people haven't gotten the memo yet in the ELR community about how important cleaning is, and you see those people struggle more. So just one of those deals. We're cleaning down to bare metal. With I like Witch's Brew. I like JV Pace both. They both work really good at pulling copper out and honing down the throats.
There's so many different things that work, right? It's just whatever gets it clean.
Whatever gets it clean, and a lot of people, what do I do for the first time? The biggest piece of advice I can say is just do your process the same every time, and then you can actually, go off of that. Modify it as you see fit. You're like, hey, I'm doing exactly this amount with this many strokes. I'm doing, these 3 things in a row every time the same, and then you'll actually, when I come back out, I know this gun takes exactly 6 shots to foul back in, and it is back in the hunt. Exactly 10. I'm sorry, 6. So within 10 shots, and I use squib bullets that are no good from the factory, that are culls. I use those to foul in because these good bullets are too expensive just to shoot and waste.
Yeah, the thing about a bore scope, once you have a bore scope, as
it's almost detrimental.
It's not. It's
I know.
People get scared about a bore scope, and I think it's one of those things that, hey, the best thing to do if you can is start using a bore scope on a new barrel, because you know what it looks like when it's brand new.
Correct.
And then as you go,
you know what it should look like.
Exactly. What happens? Most people get a bore scope and they already have a barrel that's been used up, and they look in there and they get scared. It's okay. It's
Right.
All barrels go through that
Sure.
phase. Just look at it and compare it to how it's doing, and then try to keep it there, right?
Yep.
And you're gonna start seeing. It depends on what you do. If you shoot PRS, you're gonna shoot a lot of rounds before you can clean it.
Sure.
If you're shooting F class, it's gonna be similar to PRS depending on the match. You're gonna be going 75 to 100 rounds a day, and usually we can clean. But if you're shooting ELR, how many you guys shoot a day?
Not many. A typical ELR match is going to be around 40 to 55 shots.
Yeah. So, but the point is, just clean it, and you're gonna start seeing when. Usually, my barrels, they never quit shooting. I don't pull them because they quit shooting. I pull them because they get really hard to clean.
Right.
And I'm like, I'm
and that's you couldn't have said it any better. It's that again, 3,000 rounds. I went to a match. The first match I ever took Lauren to, she had a brand new barrel. My barrel had 3,200 rounds on it, and I got 3rd place at that match. So. But it was a bear to clean. It's just like you're sweating almost trying to get the copper out of that thing.
Usually that's when I pull them. I'm like, all right.
It's just not worth
I'm just
you're wasting time here.
And usually, that usually happens around 2,000 rounds. And I'm like, you know what? I got my money's worth out of this barrel.
Sure. I feel like if you've learned something on that barrel, the learning tool alone is worth the effort you've put in to try to make an established cleaning system for yourself.
Yeah. All right, we got off in the weeds. So
we did.
So you get, you get your barrel or your distance, right?
All right.
And then you go to a certain distance. You can go just with your first profile, and then at some point you switch over to your second profile, and that happens because you add a cheater thing.
Right.
I don't know what to call it.
So this is called a TACOM HQ Charlie Tarak, and this one happens to have the Delta on in front of it, which you're going to really get a kick out of this. So this is essentially, in this device, this is the Charlie Tarak right here, and this is called the Delta in front of it.
Okay.
Okay. You don't have to have this piece on right here.
Okay.
Right. The Charlie, it has 2 opposing mirrors, one of them which has an adjustable angle. You can take it from 0 to 250 mils of elevation. That's external, not including your scope.
All right. All right.
So-
just I'm gonna pull your rifle forward so we can
I
see
need to
it.
shorten up our bipod extender here.
All right. So that goes on that bridge, I assume.
All right, so we've got our bridge here. We've got this Bobro mount, which will snap your fingers like a mantis shrimp if you're not careful. This thing's caused many a bruise on my fingers. But so this goes right here on this rail. These 2 levers lock down. And now you've got a mirror in the bottom of this thing that looks up, and you've got an adjustable mirror over here, which changes your angle. So depending on your look angle, will change, how much you're looking up, down. So if you're on paper at 100
So if they're
yards,
both perfectly 45, then there's no elevation.
correct.
And then you start from there and you start to
Processing off of that. So you have 100 yard zero. You're looking at this thing on a paper, on a bench. As soon as you snap this thing on, now all of a sudden you're looking at the dirt out in front of the rifle. So as you recalibrate the angle of your muzzle, now you're looking forward, and your barrel is accounting for that extra trajectory, and you're just crossing through its
all right.
plane at that point. So
This is crazy.
this is where I'm about to really blow your mind after you ask this question.
All right. So at some point, you said 250 mils you can get out of that.
Correct.
Plus the scope, you can get how many out of that?
I could dial 30 and then hold 20,
So
32 in the reticle.
forget the hold. Let's just say 30.
280 straight on.
So 280 mils.
Yep.
Would you not be looking at your barrel at that point?
That's just what I was about to get into. Okay. So, but in this
Explain that, because that's probably going
right. And that's exactly what I'm about to do.
Okay, go ahead.
So this is perfect. So we had to tell the story about Lauren's 3-mile shot so much. I went hoarse in the voice at SHOT Show last year. So once you get between your scope and your Charlie, or whatever device you're using to add elevation, between this and this, once you get around 60 mils, you start looking into your break or your barrel even. So the more elevation you add, the closer into your barrel you're starting to look. So at 250 mils, I kid you not, you're starting to look about right here.
Explain that, the mechanics. A lot of people probably think it works the other way. Like when you add elevation, that the scope's pointing up.
Right. So if you have your
just
barrel on
so
a
people
plane,
understand. Yeah.
the steeper your scope is behind it, the higher you raise the back end of your scope and you re-aim forward and you're looking forward at the target, your barrel is now pointed upwards to account for a longer
when
distance.
you dial elevation on a scope,
right.
a
lot of people
goes down.
Right. When you dial a scope,
Up.
your reticle is actually going up. Or I'm sorry, it's dropping.
goes
So
down.
you dial up, it
which
drops
forces-
down, and when you re-aim it, your barrel is now pointed
Yeah,
at
it
the
forces
angle.
you to point the barrel up.
Correct.
Right. Which is what this thing is doing. That's why you're looking at the ground.
And it's just doing it externally
Right.
here instead of inside your optic.
Correct.
So when you put this on and you've got a combination of 60 plus mils between this and this, you start looking at your barrel. The Delta, the whole point of it is it's got mirrors sideways that look around the side of your barrel, and if you note the angle of the top of the Delta
down
versus the Charlie,
it's
accounting for that. It just knows that you're going to be shooting over 60 mils of elevation. So your barrel's like that. If you take this off, now you're blinded, by the end of your barrel. Put this on, look right around it, and you're bypassing it.
That's crazy. Shooting around corners.
Yeah. So when we were shooting 4,002 yards the other day, I needed exactly 77.1 mils of elevation with that station pressure, temp, wind, etc. And, we put this thing on, dial up the scope. Our first shot, I get out in the field sometimes and I'm not focused on myself. I'm focused on my clients always. So my cold bore shot on this thing is always 28 feet a second slower than every shot after that. My first shot skips into the target, like 5 feet short. Well, out of there, if you do the math on that, well, guess what? That's right around that 30 foot a second.
Right.
So I pulled my head out of my rear and actually focused on what I was supposed to be focusing on. It could have been a first rounder. It wasn't, but second was not terrible.
Yeah.
And holding 13.4 mils of wind. So,
All right. That's okay. We got the elevation.
yep.
Let's go to the wind now.
Okay. Yeah. This is where things get real.
Yeah. Because
A lot of voodoo going on.
even the elevation, that's the easy part, and
Sure,
even
that's
that was
known.
very complicated. So now, okay, I want you to walk me how do you make a 4,000 yard 4,002. My bad, yard. So okay, we got the elevation, which requires a lot of money, from what I can see. That's number one.
It
All right,
does.
let's get to the windage part.
Okay. All right.
How do you figure that?
How do I call wind? All right. Some of y'all might, know who I am. Some of you don't. Emil Praslik and I call all the wind for AB's ELR team. And everyone always kind of musters around us to kind of figure out, hey, what do we do here? And me having the ability to go out, I've got a 2,500 yard, 360 degree range, and then we can shoot 4 miles end to end on this property where I train. So, you go out there and play enough, you start learning some stuff. And what we've learned is when you're shooting kind of inside that 2,500 yard range, you can almost trust your Kestrel to a T, depending on how high performing your cartridge is. So if I hold up and we're on the top of my tower and I'm getting, 13 mile an hour, it's probably going to out to 2,500 yards. You can run 13 miles an hour and you'll at least hit the target or scare the crap of it on the, the JV side of the target downwind. Once we start shooting past that, you just have to learn to extrapolate. If the wind's blowing X amount of mile an hour where I am, up where the bullet's max ordnance is going to be, it's going to be blowing harder. There's less friction of the ground to disrupt the wind, so it's blowing harder up there. Am I shooting near a tree line, a canyon wall, whatever? Those are things that will start to dismiss your true wind calls. I don't know if you've obviously shot out at Raton on the tub range. Well, the King of 2 Mile was shot over the 1,000 yards up into the mountains behind that.
Right.
And man, that's as humbling of a range as you'll ever shoot on, because it doesn't really matter what's going on the firing line. It's nothing like that up where the bullet's going.
Right.
So all that just goes out the window.
Well, that's why I'm asking this, because
Right,
even
and that's
for us at 1,000 yards in Raton, it's freaking challenging.
The way that wind shears across
Yeah.
the hill back there.
And so that's what I'm saying. Okay, how do you manage this?
So the property where we're at in Hearn, Texas, where I train, it's pretty flat. That's the one thing I've got going for me out there. It's a great spot for people to do introduction ELR stuff. There's very few tree lines you have to deal with that are going to disrupt your wind. So you can, hey, I'm holding the Kestrel up. This is how we're doing our wind captures. And okay, now let's lay down and take the shot and then go off of what we saw versus what we thought was going to happen. Well, with the ELR stuff, I actually use an app on my phone. Then it gives you mile per hour of wind at different elevations. So I will actually refer to that because it tells you wind 100 meters off the ground. Well,
what's the name of that app?
Vintusky. It's like a $4 a year app. I mean, it's the best money I've spent, in terms of getting something that I can take that data, real time use it, and translates to extremely, extremely accurate what your Kestrel's saying. It's usually within a mile an hour of what a Kestrel says.
Okay.
Real time at your person. So we look at the Vintusky app, and if you'll notice when you start shooting these really big distances, the higher up you go in altitude, the wind rotates clockwise, no matter where you're at. I had a pilot data log a bunch of this stuff. He's a Continental pilot, and he gave me this information like 4 or 5 years ago. And when we're shooting 3.5 miles, our first time we attempted it, I was using the information he had given me on everything he was data logging from like 5,000 feet all the way down to the ground. And he was like, yeah, I'm seeing these trends where, as you come off the ground, the wind starts to move clockwise in rotation versus what it's doing on the ground. And sure enough, if you go in that Vintusky app, our wind angle was different just 100 meters up off the ground. It's like 15 degrees different than it was on the ground. So you have to calculate, what is my average height of the bullet? What is my average velocity? What is my average wind angle? So you're actually calculating averages, and it kind of becomes an art form as much as a science at that point. Because there's no way, like, obviously you had your new doodad. I don't know if I need to mention that at the Precision Rifle Expo on the drone.
Yeah, the Wind Zero.
Man, that would be great to have. But I feel like that's still going to be a year or so down the line.
So you have an app.
Yep.
they're not very accurate. They're not live, are they? I mean, it's
They
impossible.
will run up.
Even the
they do-
freaking flags are not live. Correct. Is what I'm getting at. You know,
Correct.
So it's
the
impossible.
flags aren't live at MaxSword. So honestly, this becomes as much of a voodoo as it does anything. I mean, I hate to say
that's
it,
what's
and
going
I'm
through my head.
as scientific based as anybody, but at the same time, like that's just something that we can't physically measure right now. We're doing the best predictions. That
Not
we can
live.
You
That's
can't
the
predict.
problem. It's a lag.
The true flight path of a bullet cannot be given back to you in a wind call live.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No, it does. That's because you know we shoot and we have flags.
Sure.
Right, and you look at the flag and you're like,
that's
oh,
not-
boom, boom, center, boom. Then you shoot again and it's like a 9 over here, an 8, and you look at the flag and it just did this.
Right.
And it's right there.
Sure.
So I can only imagine what it's like when you're having to
Correct.
send that
MaxSword.
bullet up there 1,000 yards up in the air.
So one thing that we were looking when Lauren made her 3 mile shot is, you know, what are the weird anomalies that are happening to that bullet as it flies? That bullet was gaining altitude when it went transonic. How often does that happen? Not very. Like so what's going on with that bullet, you know, is it's going up in altitude and it goes transonic, subsonic before it even hits MaxSword. You know, and there's been times where I've calculated it to where like we're hitting MaxSword like right when it goes transonic and just something weird happens up there. You want to talk about your random flyers?
No,
No,
I don't. I don't want to talk about it.
if-
This is just thinking about this is going, holy like, how do you even hit anything?
That's why I like this though, because you can't really put a finger on everything, and to still
to
still be considered, you know,
I have the exact same argument against it. It's like,
sure, and
it's
that's
it's luck. A lot of it is luck.
I was dropped on my head enough as a child, just enough to where that's the kind of stuff that interests me. You know, it's you know, the PRS stuff, yeah, I was decent at it. And could I come back at it?
Are all
Realistically,
ELR guys big lottery players? Like you guys play the
that's
lottery?
what's funny. It's like I don't like. There's only a few guys that gamble. Like I don't gamble. I don't
This
play
sounds
the
like
lottery.
as much as a gamble as I've ever heard about. It's again,
I like to do it just because it's hard.
I
There's more to it than that, but
yeah, I'm assuming,
the
but just
challenge.
based. This is my ignorance showing through, obviously, right? Because I'm just going, how the hell? Like it just seems like it's. Anyway, I can't even.
This is one of those
compute it.
deals that, like, I really hope you can come out in the field and shoot with me sometime this year, and just to kind of.
What if I hit?
Cool,
Then it's
I'll
gonna
shake your hand.
No, it's gonna.
Yeah, I
it's
just
gonna be
gave
the
you-
worst
I'm the
thing
world's
that
worst
could
drug
ever
dealer.
happen to me if I hit.
Because then I just gave you your first dose of heroin, and now you're
That's
going to
my
go all
point.
in. And
That's my point. What if I hit something? It's gonna be bad. It's gonna be very expensive.
I know. That's why I've gotten rid of all my. I still got my tub rifle. You know, that's my go-to hunting gun.
It's probably gonna be the most expensive hit I've ever done.
But I'm going to be paying for it, though, buddy.
No, bullshit.
I'll let you
this
shoot.
is the dealer strategy. The first
I'm
one's
not
free.
making any money off of you, but
No,
if you start
that's not
shooting
the
ELR, I'll
point.
probably
That's
lose
not
money
the-
because you'll start going and
It's
doing
gonna
good.
cost me a lot. That's my point. Like the best thing that could happen to me is I go out there, shoot a few of your rounds, and don't hit anything, and I walk away. Go, yep, okay, that's that. The worst thing that can
You know
happen to
good
me.
Well, that's not going to happen.
The worst thing that could happen is I go out there and I hit something, and then it's like, I know what it's. I remember the first time I hit a freaking X at 1,000.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
I'm still. I'm still.
Did it not
going.
alter the course of your life? Look what you
That
do
is
now for
my
a living.
point. That is my point.
I'm sorry, I just put my big old mitt in front of the camera there.
That's my point. Anyway, I'm half joking, but yeah, I mean, I can see the trajectory of my life if I was to go out and try this. Because, listen, David Mann, one of the best F-class shooters I know, and I will tell that to his face. That guy is good, and now he just got completely sucked into ELR.
Yep, and he shoots the most expensive cartridge that exists, 416 Werner.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So David Mann, he was big F-class shooter, man.
Yeah.
And now he's ELR. So it happened to him.
But he's good ELR too.
Well, he was good F-class
Yeah.
too. I mean, he's a good shooter. And here's the problem. To me, in my opinion, there's no such thing as a natural good shooter. You have to work really hard at it. And
You want to hear a real funny, quick story about my shooting career?
go ahead.
I was terrible when I started. To the point, the first time
That's the first time I heard that story. Like
I'm
nobody's
the first to
ever.
admit,
Everybody.
I'm only good because I
joking.
went and failed so much.
I'm joking.
100% straight up. No, so I got last place the first PRS match I ever shot. It was the first field match I ever shot.
That's my point.
I got last. I was like, I thought I was decent on my home comfort range.
That's my point.
I was terrible.
I have yet to meet somebody who's a really good shooter
That just fell out of bed and did it. Yeah,
it
they don't
takes
exist.
a lot of work.
They don't understand.
And when you said, David Mann's a really good ELR shooter. Oh, I know, because he was a good F class
He already
shooter.
did his homework in F class.
Well, not only that, he's willing to put in the work.
For sure.
That's the point, right? So if he was, that's just him, right? He's a hardworking guy.
Correct.
And everybody that's doing well, and some that aren't, that's just how it is.
That's
just,
right.
You're putting in the work, and that's my point. If I go shoot this thing, I don't even know what the worst thing would
be. It before you come shoot with me, and you're like, "This is a stupid sport." I'm not gonna...
Well, but as I was saying that, I'm going, well, what if I don't hit anything, and these guys hit all the time? Then I'm gonna be like, what? And then I'm gonna want to do it myself. Yeah, there's the best thing I can do is just not go for now. For now, I'm gonna do it. I've had so many people ask me about it. I'm gonna do it
More than anything, like just having this device. Lauren, not a big girl. She a little thing. She has a bigger rifle than I have. It is larger. Her gun, what was it, like less than a half pound under the weight limit at King of 2 Mile? Yeah, I think her gun was like 39.7 at King of 2 Mile, and mine was like 39 even. And, she could shoot 200 rounds in a day with this and be just fine. Like this bipod extender it changes the way your rifle recoils so much that it makes it okay for just about anybody to lay behind one of these rifles, free recoil it, let the gun do all the work, and just, work on what you need to work on.
All right.
I know this is totally different than what you're used to seeing up here.
Let's get this rifle out of the way so we can see. All right. Now we can see your pretty face. All right. So it's hard. Bottom line. It's hard to make an impact at 4,000 yards.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those deals that a couple of years ago, like if you accidentally hit, awesome. We're kind of expecting it now. Everything keeps getting dialed in. Like on the Kestrel, for example, our ability to monitor our powder temperature, our ambient temperatures, putting in muzzle velocity temperature tables, for predicting out there at those really big distances. Certain powders that you run, like 50 BMG, for example, from Hotchin, it's kind of about a 1 to 1.1 feet per second per degree on your muzzle velocity. So you develop a load in Texas where, like, for example, this early summer, I was going out to shoot the Raton Thunder out there that Randy Pascal puts on. And, when I chronographed here, it's like 29:44. I get out there to Raton and it's snowing. And when I left here, it was 100. I was like 28.50 on my muzzle velocity. And I was like, oh boy, what do you do in that situation? Well, for one, knowing where my gun shoots good and bad on velocity.
Yeah.
I can try to load against that and what I'm predicting my weather's going to be. Don't always get that choice. You can try to do load development as soon as you get there. It's pretty easy to do that out in Raton if you've got a mobile reloading setup. But
yeah, of course.
a lot of people, a lot of people load their ammo at the match. I
would assume. I mean, okay, I say that, but I don't know. Yeah, bench
that's one thing you don't. Bench rest guys do that. That's something you don't see a whole lot of ELR guys do. I don't know if it's because of our equipment's just physically larger or presses are bigger. All that crap. Bench rest guys they're throwing on volume and powder drop and whatnot.
Right.
As to where we're trying to, you got the new Super Trickler. I've had one for, a while, and those things throw to the second decimal point. And I don't know how much that stuff matters in bench rest, but I know it's pretty important for ELR, and what are you doing to your case necks and, prep wise, do you do your final seating depth like right before you go up to the line? I know David Tubb does that, and I've not experimented with that. Like, I feel like my gun kind of shoots the same, and I've tried that experience. Like, let's load fresh ammo, go straight out there and shoot, and then let's keep 20 rounds left over from this, let it sit for 3 months and go shoot it again. When you start shooting at those distances, your errors are magnified so large that you're trying to put a finger on what's the thing that's making this thing shoot good today and not the next time. So we're constantly rotating through variables and trying to nail down on what matters today versus what matters 3 months from now. Still digging that rabbit hole.
I don't know if you've seen that podcast that Hornady did, where say the problem, it's not that anything's changing, it's just that the load. Have you seen it? Have you heard about it?
Yeah.
All right, so that the load is just, that's just what the load does. It's just never consistent. You know what I mean? Like, some days we'll shoot small, some days we'll shoot big, and you just haven't had a large enough sample to really know. So, like, when you say kind of acts weird one day, they say no, that's just within the noise of that's just how your rifle shoots.
I wouldn't say it's a day per se. I think there's more to it than that.
Okay. Well, he's going to be here.
Okay.
Ballistician.
I'm
Make sure you watch that episode. I have tons of questions.
I'm always open to learn. That's one thing. I'm never going to be closed off on an idea on, we just need to be able to data log it.
Yeah.
But there's this, I feel like if you have a gun that shoots, if you've got a gun that shoots in the, third minute pretty consistently, and then one day it's just bad. Well, I know with me, I'm as temperamental as a rifle is, most likely. If I'm not in a good headspace and my mind is on something that it shouldn't be, I'm probably not gonna have a good day at the range.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Just for my own, the way I take that is, for example, if I have a rifle that's a good shooter, and then one day it doesn't shoot, I'm not gonna be like, oh, it's okay. It's just that's just how it is. No, I'm gonna see if I can't figure out what's wrong, because in my head there's something wrong. That's just not part of it.
So
it's gonna be an interesting conversation with him. And
and I should have put an asterisk kind of about what I was saying. Is it the shooter or is it the rifle? Well, when you get serious enough, and we make livelihoods out of this sport. We don't have those bad days at the range like a lot of, tourists do in this community. We can usually figure out why something's doing something. We're going to be able to measure it, account for it one way or another.
Right.
And that's, I always get laughed at every time I go to the practice. It's like I'm leaving out of town for a month because I'm taking everything with me, because if I have to do surgery on a rifle or something, it's a lot of equipment to go along with ELR. It's a lot of support equipment.
I took my machinist right before Christmas. We went out to the range and said, I've never took you out to the range. I mean, you make all these breaks and all these things. And we had just chambered a barrel. So let's go shoot. And I took him with me. And he didn't shoot, but it was really windy. That's when the cold front came in. It was really windy. Yeah. And I said, let's go shoot. So we go out there, and I said, let me just set up right quick. And my rest and my mat and my elbow pad and my chronograph and my zero wind meter and my eat target and the app and the phone and the tablet. And he's like, what? Holy shit.
Yeah.
I said, you gotta train like you fight, man.
Dude, that's it. Like, we're going to win every freaking day. Like, you've got to go win the day every time.
Because if you don't shoot well, then you go, for example, like, something as simple, I mean, you keep your chronograph attached, right? But for me, when I'm practicing, something as simple as not putting a chronograph on that rifle, if I have a wild shot, it's like, whoa.
What happened?
What happened? Did it start off bad? Or did it happen from here to there? Like, what happened? And, just having that data is very helpful.
Right. Yeah. Do I chase that shot or do I not? Well, now I know if I need to. Well, I just got an ELR 89, and that measures time of flight function to get you ballistic coefficient. So not only are we going to be able to, highly catalog all of our muzzle velocities, we can actually get our BC data on every shot in practice now. So we're already going down the target anyways. All we have to do is hook up a couple of speakers, and now we can data log ballistic coefficient and muzzle velocity against each other.
So I saw that at the NRA convention.
Mm-hmm.
And they look very interesting because, you know, we point bullets and we sort bullets and all that. And you know, my head immediately goes, oh, man, I could really test the levels of pointing.
So that's just the thing.
And I'm like, I can just, instead of, you know, because right now I rely on group size, which is, you know, believe the target, right? But at the same time, it's like I want to have some additional data. You know, is my BC, when I shot the small group, was it because it was just like random?
Sure.
Like it just things fell into place? Or is it really because this data is backing up that, oh, your BC variation was only 0.5%.
Correct.
Versus that bigger group was 1.5%. You know?
Right. So
you start to kind of weed out a lot of more stuff.
Right. And, you know, and your small group that you got on video, it was what, 1.3 for 5 shots. Lauren, I don't know if you can appreciate how good that is. And to do it on video is...
The first 4 were 0.3.
0.3. Like, he had 4 shots that were 0.3 to 1,000.
I should have stopped right there. People would have lost their minds.
I would have said maybe shoot a 6th.
All I
it
had
goes
was
both
5.
directions.
All I had
so
was
you
5.
only had the 5.
It was the last 5.
Still, though, like, to shoot a 1.3 for 5 at 1,000. Like, 3 tests the, you know, the rifle and 5 tests the shooter. That's the old adage. I mean,
but anyway.
Yeah, either way. You know, I've shot a couple of sub-1 inch groups in practice for 3. Same thing. I was like, oh, I'm not going to go for the 4th or 5th because I'm, you know, just a little girl. But yeah, you think you're hard as nails until you start that. Oh boy, that's a group right there. And my ignorance on that 7-inch 2-mile group, you know, like all I said to the guy forward observing is, if I hit, tell me I hit. I'll do the same wind call.
Yeah.
Hit. Okay, send another. Hit again.
And then the guy calling, he goes, you can hear his probably nervousness.
Yeah, I could. Oh, that was a hit. You know, and I was like, you know, it's just enough information to like almost throw me. And then because I was going to just see how many I could do in a row. And when I hit those 3, he goes, oh my gosh, you should see this water line. I was like, I'm done. You know, I'm not going to do that again. But I'd have probably missed the target on the 4th one. But
yeah.
But now, okay, so you're wanting to test all this information, dude. I'd be more than happy to come down with that ELR one day if you want to spend some time just testing.
Yeah,
against,
I think that would be very
and
interesting.
Then if you want to throw this bad boy in the mix against all the other.
Okay, so David called me about that. Is that what I think it is?
It is.
Let me see. All right, let me see because I've never seen it up close. David called me up one day, and he said, send me some bullets, and I will point them for you or do the ring. And
yeah, so that's a nose ring
we
tool.
ended up never doing it, and I need to do it.
Okay, so
tell us what this is.
So that is a David Tubb nose ring tool. All right. So essentially, this thing is set up to cut an annular cut on just behind your knee plat. So you can see that ring where my seating die ate into that, just ever so.
Let's see if we can get it to focus.
There you go. All right. So it's going to be, yeah. Right. So that little ring is from my seating die, about halfway between there and the back of where that aluminum ballistic tip is about where the ring gets cut on a projectile, and almost, I would actually say, closer to right where that line is on the ballistic tip to the O-job there. Well, you can cut different depths and see which is the minimum cut you can do. So, you know, a lot of your plats, a lot of the reasons why people will trim is to get a uniform plat, and then you're pointing to get your BC back.
Right.
Okay. That nose ring tool is cutting a uniform ring on your projectile, and the wind is seeing that as the front of the projectile, and it's a very uniform cut. So it makes pointing, trimming, all that stuff right out the window. So you can just zip one of these rings on, you can take loaded ammo and do it to already loaded ammo, or you can do it to the projectile before you seat. You can change your contact depth from, 1/1000ths to cut so deep you're getting into lead, and whatever you want to do. And we're kind of finding between competition stuff, between 20 and 30 thousandths. And for hunting, you can take a projectile that's not necessarily good for expanding, cut a 40 thousandths nose ring into it. Now that thing goes in a foot and goes off like a grenade. Wow. And you can hunt with your match bullets I did that. I shot a really big bull elk last year, and I shot it with a 250 grain Sear Match King 338 bullet. That bullet's got a very thick jacket. Well, this thing went off in that elk and grenaded so bad, we had to throw the offside shoulder out because it was completely hematomed. And for a bullet that doesn't really expand, it didn't exit. It did a number on that animal. So you can make tighter BCSDs, and you can turn a projectile quite a bit more lethal than it already is.
Well,
and that is,
I'm a sucker for new toys.
So maybe we can zip some of your 7mm before I leave.
Yeah,
and you can shoot them and
just see what happens.
Cut a couple of different depths for you and test them out.
Absolutely.
So
that's interesting,
and it works on rimfire ammunition too. So we've already shot that on the ELR. So you can. He's got one for 22 long rifle up to 375, and they've 168 Sear Match King 30 caliber bullet. Shoots good on paper at 100. Not known for shooting at long distance. You zip up nose rings on those things, and they'll go through transonic just fine after that.
Wow!
That changes your boundary layer barrel.
So it increases the BC as well. Or
typically, you're going to lose. It's keeping your projectile more stable as it goes through, because it's moving your center of pressure back towards the center of gravity, and the closer those things are, projectiles tend to be a little more happy. So, cutting that ring on, I've only seen it make something better. I've not seen it worse on BC testing. It only decreases your BCSD. I've not seen it worsen a BCSD, only make it better. So you might lose 2 or 3 G7 points, which is almost lost in the noise. Like we're talking about like a click at 1,000, but how tight your SDs are on your BC is considerably better.
Small groups win.
That's it.
All right. You mentioned rimfire.
Yes.
Let's switch gears to rimfire.
Let's do it,
You do a lot of rimfire.
Ooh, that's an understatement. So, yeah.
So tell us why you do so much rimfire and what have you learned?
I do a lot of rimfire shooting because I work for DI Precision and do all of the testing and tuning on our rimfires that we build at the shop, and we build a lot of them. We're spitting out typically 3 a day, and I test shoot every single one of them, and I will tune them to make sure they shoot a smaller than 1 inch of vertical at 200 yards before they leave the shop, or they don't leave the shop.
Wow.
So I can't tell you how many sub 1 inch groups I've shot.
For 200?
200 yards. I've probably shot 50 sub 1 inch groups at 200 yards, testing, tuning different rifles for people. So we had a client come in the other day on a whim. He's like, oh, I want one of those. I was like, we'll have one done by lunch. He's like, we had one done by lunch. And he was like, oh, you weren't joking. I was like, no, I wasn't. You said you wanted one. And I know when you say you want one, you want one. So here it is. So he does the paperwork out on it. We put one of your V2s on the end of it. And, man, I have to say that thing has shot some, I think I might even sent you some of those groups.
Yep.
I mean, this thing was shooting 1.5 inches at 300 yards of vertical. We shot a 5-shot group at 480 yards that was under 3 inches tall. Like,
yeah,
I've never seen performance on a rimfire like this, and shot, pretty decent. And then we started messing with the V2, and it just flattened out. And the first 5 shots at 200 after we settled where we wanted the tuner, it shot a 0.7 for 5 shots. Wow. And then we go to 300, and it shoots under 1.5 inches. Then we go to 350, it still shoots under 1.5 inches. Then we go to 400, and it's shooting like 2.5, 3 inches. And then we go to the 500 or the 480, and it shoots a 5-shot that's, it could fit in this phone. I mean, it's just incredible. Then he goes 20 for 20 at 500 yards. It's where my personal rifle was having a little bit of trouble at 500 yards. Like, I shot 10 and I hit 3 out of 10, and he gets his gun up and just 20 for 20 at 500 yards. I'm like, I would say you have an exceptionally well.
And all of a sudden, the rifle's no longer for sale, sir.
Oh gosh, yeah, that rifle. Forgot to tell you that barrel was special, and
yeah,
prices went up another $2,500.
No, hell no, it's not for sale anymore.
Yeah, so
no, it's crazy. Like,
so yeah, I do all the testing and tuning at DI.
So these people are gonna ask, well, I'm gonna ask, why are you shooting 500 yards? Like, what's the purpose?
We actually shoot over 1,000 yards with 22s because we're stupid. But no. So what's the purpose? So the good thing you can do with a 22 is you can build a really hyper accurate 22, and you just do it once. You're not going to shoot your barrel out. I've got on that barrel closing in on 15,000 rounds, and it shoots just as good now as it does day one. So keeping your ammo subsonic, you just don't get, your heat built up in your barrel. So you're not stressing your throat and whatnot. So those things just shoot absolutely lights out. Once you get a good barrel, you never have to build another one. So you can cross train also. So the way I tell people to cross train on their rimfire stuff is look at your data at 1,000 yards if you're a PRS guy. All right, what's your drop and drift for 1,000 yards and a 10 mile an hour full value? Well, if you look at a rimfire shooting, say center X or minus plus or something, same drop, same wind drift. You're right around the 2 mils of wind and a 10 mile an hour full value, and you're right around that 7 mils of drop on your elevation.
At what distance?
At 200 yards.
Okay.
So you can go out there at 200 yards and shoot at a half, a 1, and a 2-minute plate. Well, now that's very similar to cross training at 1,000.
I see.
So you're going to have the same max ord, same amount of wind drift, etc. So I feel like that's a good training tool. I'm also a big believer, though, in only shooting how you compete, because your recoil isn't the same. But if you just, hey, I got to drive 3 hours to go get 1,000 yards, or I can drive.
Well, I mean, you can dry fire, right?
You can.
And then that's one, because when you dry fire, you never miss.
This is true.
And then you can say, okay, I've done my dry firing, my positional, whatever, right?
Sure. Yep.
Don't dry fire with a 22. Okay, let's throw that out.
You can
there.
with voodoos.
Really?
Yep.
Okay. Well,
Absolutely. Dry fire all you want.
okay. Well, I have one of those. So, but the point is, you can dry fire, right? That's the first thing you should do.
Sure.
Practice your positional stuff, and then if you want to get in the wind and learn how to read the wind, and then you can do the 22.
Correct.
Right?
Yep.
200 yards. That's fairly simple.
Sure. It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah. And then, of course, then you have your
If you want to go out in it,
your center fire.
sure. But yeah, why do we want to even try to shoot 500 yards with a 22? Well, again, I guess this is the challenge. It's not easy to do. You have to, it's a whole new learning curve. The 22s are so sensitive with their dwell time. Like anything you do behind the gun shows up downrange with a 22. I mean, anything. So the center fire will let you get away with some stuff. The rim fires are ruthless, especially when you get hyper accurate rim fires like what we're building. I mean, everything shows up. So we just built a bench rest 22 to do some ARA cards. Man, you want to talk about humbling. So you're sitting there looking through a 30 power scope at 50 yards. You're like, this is going to be easy. 25 shots. I think it's a 16th inch dot you're trying to shoot on an X. And my best score to date is a 2400 16X outside with that bench rifle. And I actually did that with my Phoenix bipod and a rear bag. I wasn't shooting the, I forget the name of that rest that we've got now that can, if you
Seb?
say
Seb?
it's that maroon aluminum, you can dial everything externally. The whole rifle moves as a system.
Oh, then I don't know what that is.
Okay. Well, either way, we have that system now, and all you do is touch the trigger. Like, it really takes a human element out of it, and you have to dial that thing. Well, there's a whole learning curve on how to dial the gears on that thing. It's like I have to go back and forth. I have to dial to it and come back into it.
To remove the backlash.
Right. You're taking the slack out of your gearing.
That's the reason for the V2 tuner with the spring.
Correct.
To
Right.
eliminate
and,
that.
And that was,
add
on the V1, that was one of the things that made me somewhat desirable as an instructor, is because I knew how to tell people how to, get rid of your first shot flyer after you do. Like, that first shot always goes out. I was like, yeah, what do you expect? I mean, look at the mechanism. But now with the V2, with the spring in it,
Yeah, it's just more, it's more better.
Better.
So, is there ELR 22?
Absolutely. Of course there is.
Of course there is.
The current record right now.
Why wouldn't there be?
ELR Central record, they have a 12-inch standard, plate. Again, 3 for 3 cold bore, and I think the record is exactly 500 yards.
Wow.
That's really impressive. We were talking about this when I first showed up, a typical 10-shot string out of my 22 is about a 30 ES. That's really commonplace on all the different guns that I test. And I do chronograph almost everything that I'm testing. Mm-hmm. Again, why would I not keep that data? If it's there to data log, I'm dumb for not taking down that data, and seeing how certain barrels perform at different velocities and whatnot. And, but yeah, we'll, just knowing the efforts that guy had gone through to take his ammunition and how to cull out good ammo versus bad ammo when you get it and it's already loaded, just knowing how to do that. Where do I even start? Back when we were dumb and ignorant, started all this years ago, we were just weighing it. Like, looking back at it, we laugh at ourselves like, whoa, we should just weight sort everything and see what happens. Nothing happened. Like, your rim thicknesses are different. Your projectile weights are different. Your powder charges are different, and now people are starting to reload lathe turn solids for ELR 22 stuff. And I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole yet. I don't know if there's good enough primed brass available, to really get consistent results. And I could be wrong on that. I haven't gone down that road, but as of what I'm seeing right now and my buddies that are doing it, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole yet. Like, Midas Plus shoots so good in mine that I'd be hard pressed to switch, when it's shooting sub inch at 200 yards. I mean, that's
crazy.
Yep.
What's do you have your profile on there for a 22 for 500 yards? I'm curious to see what
right at 30 mils.
30 mils.
Yeah. So that's kind of the 2,700 yard range for my enabler. So I just have that data memorized. But yeah, let me pull it up here.
That's crazy.
Center X let me go to 500. Give me 2 seconds here. And we shoot, our range is 497, which again, that matters. Let's go to, one of the things that people are going to hamstring themselves is they rely on other people's information. Mm-hmm. So if you go to a match and I know at F class it doesn't matter, you can get siders and get dialed in right where you need to. We can't do that at ELR matches. So I take my rangefinder everywhere I go, because that's one of the constants that I have is I'm truing this based on the only information that I can measure. My rangefinder might be different than that rangefinder. So I'm going to use mine. And nothing against that rangefinder. I just know that I've trued all my information based on what I use in practice every time. So I'm going to use that at a match every time also. Is if you go to a public shooting range and they have a 200-yard firing line and it's actually 203 yards, well, guess what? Start looking at your information on your Kestrel, and if you put in 200 versus 203, that's 0.2 of a mil different. So if I went to true thinking it was 200, but it was wrong, now my whole algorithm's messed up.
So I have a story about that.
Let's hear it.
Long time ago, there was this man that reached out to me. He's getting into, F class and all that, and not really F class. He just wanted to learn how to shoot long range, right? Mm-hmm. And I said, well, you're going to need a rangefinder, a good one. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So I said, get a good rangefinder, right? And he said, well, what should I get? I said, get a Leica. This is 10 years ago. And he's like, okay. So he goes and gets one. And, of course, they were expensive, right? And he's like, really? I mean, can I get just like a cheapie? Like, no, just spend the money. Yep. Because that's what I had done. I said, no, just spend the money and you'll have a really good one. Well, he calls me disappointed. He doesn't like his rangefinder because he took it to the Silhouette range.
Oh, boy.
And the 500, number one, he didn't understand that Silhouette are in meters, right? The berms. Yeah. But anyway, he's very disappointed because that rangefinder is no good because he shot the berms and they were, I shot the 500-yard berm and it was like 520 and then or 560 or whatever it was. And well, yeah, but then the berm is farther behind.
Sure, it's 10, 12, 20 yards. Who knows
and
how far
then he shot the
target.
200 and it was like 225 or 230 and that rangefinder was no good. And I said, no.
That's not how it works.
The rangefinder is perfectly okay. I said, if it had been dead on, then I would have told you they can't be right. But anyway, so yeah, that was in his head. He was truing up the rangefinder, by measuring berms, and just like you said, hey, a 200-yard berm is not always 200 yards.
Sure.
More likely, you can almost assume that it's not.
Right. You know, and even like, man, I teach people how to use a rangefinder differently. You know, you can't just assume that the beam is right in the middle of your reticle. So what I tell people to do is, you know, go to the end of your street or something and try to find your stop sign or whatever that's 200-300 yards. Quadrate that thing in, bring it in from the left, bring it in from the right, bring it in from the top and from the bottom, and see where it starts reading that sign at from every direction. How big is your beam divergence there? You know, and then I had one rangefinder that was a Rockwell Viper. I mean, those used to be like really awesome rangefinders. And that thing hit like 2 minutes above where the reticle was.
Oh.
So I knew that if I was using that thing, that I'm exactly where to aim. I'd put the top of the ring on the very bottom of the target, and it would hit the top of the target at almost every distance.
I had never thought about that. That
Quadrating your laser.
Well, that it's not sighted in.
Sure.
Right.
And very few rangefinders are like dead center. Now, the good one that I have now, it is. It's better for that money, you know.
Yeah.
But even my Vectronics Terrapin, you know, the Plur 5, you know, those things will do. It's a good, you know, small handheld ranger. I've had that thing for over a decade, and it'll do 4,000 yards, you know, decently. But again, laser is not, and it has a small reticle. That's one thing I hear. My biggest complaint is people always say, hey, the reticles are way too big for measuring ELR targets, because I put a tiny 36, well, tiny. I put a 36-inch plate out there at, you know, 2,900 yards. It's pretty small in that reticle. When you got a 20-minute of angle reticle, what good am I doing? I'm not even close to aiming at what I think I'm aiming at.
Right.
So that's where I tell people, hey, get Google Earth, check it against that versus your rangefinder, and if you could do a third source, do that also.
Yeah.
So, but the best thing I could tell people is quadrate your laser on a road sign, you know, however many hundreds yards away, and figure out where does that thing start reading. And the reason I say road sign, it's got that highly reflective surface on it. It will make your laser pick up way sooner than what you think. So just start walking it in from every direction, and you'll figure out where that laser's actually going. Is it zeroed to my reticle?
That's pretty interesting. Again, I had never even considered the fact that it could be off. But again, this goes back to what Speedy taught me. Assume everything's broken.
That's the equivalent of a tall target test for a scope.
Yeah.
You know, you assume that it's going to track vertically just because it came from X manufacturer. Well, it might for 90% of the travel, and then it kind of lists off one way or another at the top.
Once people start doing tall target tests, they're going to be very. They're going to learn tonight, like Kevin Hart said, that
you'll learn today.
They can learn today that there's a lot that can go wrong. Even if they're going to finally figure out why those scope levels are so expensive.
Buddy,
because the cheap ones,
you aren't even joking. Those I would almost have a Starrett level on my rifle if I could.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, it's worth having that extra sensitive bubble level on there.
Yeah, I mean, but anyway, it's just everything. The farther you want to shoot,
the more it matters.
The more it matters.
You know, and again, the Charlie Terac. You know, talk about getting into the weeds there with tall targeting. You know, a lot of people they leave. You know, I have a second profile in my Kestrel, so everyone measures their scope height, whatever method you use. It doesn't matter. I don't care. Most people leave their scope height the same on the Charlie Terac profile. Well, that's not true. Give me 2 seconds to yank it right quick.
That sounded so dirty.
Man, it's good 2 seconds there. Refreshed. So, hey, we got to keep it entertaining around here. So, when you put this thing on the rail, your windage knob or your focus knob sits considerably lower than this deal. Well, the last mirror that's affecting elevation in this thing, the center of it is measured over here in the middle of this. Mm-hmm. So you're not using the same bore height. So now I have to put in this bore height and then shoot the tall target, because before, you know, you'd put that thing on and say, I get it calibrated for whatever distance, or whatever elevation amount. And I've got, right now that thing has 50 mils in it. So to shoot 2 miles, I need between 55 and 57, depending on the day. And then even less than that out at King of 2 Mile. Mm-hmm. As you can tell, that thing's very robust and sturdy. It is a very, very
I'm looking
nice
at this thing, and it's freaking beefy.
Yep. So very strong. Well, that was part of the equation that I kept, like, why was my algorithm for that always off? Well, it says it right in the directions. If I'd have read the book, like every red-blooded American man, I just like, I'll figure this crap out on the way.
That's directions are just the manufacturer's suggestion.
Just a suggestion.
That's their opinion. That's their opinion how you should do it.
Right. So I was leaving my bore height the same on my Charlie Tarac profile, and it was always good at whatever distance John had, calibrated that thing for. And then I got to looking at it one day. I was literally just sitting there in frustration, just sitting there, just staring at my rifle. I was like, what am I missing here? And then it just, ding, light bulb moment. I was like, the last mirror that's adjusting in here is taller than what I have my bore height located at.
Yeah.
And when I remeasured that, it was like 0.4 inches different. Algorithm lined up perfectly after that. So it was just my ignorance.
Ignorant. You're being ignorant. That's crazy. Yeah.
Man. So just
everything
knowing
about it.
how to use the equipment correctly. This tool will allow you to shoot very far, but if you don't know how to utilize it, like, what good is it?
Yeah, like anything else.
Just like the Kestrel, good data in, good data out, and me teaching this, that's one of the good things about being in with AB. I know exactly how to run this Kestrel to get it to work really well for you. And a lot of people, the way I see people fudge numbers on that, I'm just like, how do you come to these conclusions? Like I get pecked to death at these ELR matches. People come up to me and are like, hey, look at my Kestrel and see if it's right. And I'm just like, your wind direction's 180 degrees opposite of what it's doing out there. Like, what were you thinking? But I don't know. I'm always helping my students out, making sure they're on the right path and whatnot. But, sometimes I just want to go hide at these matches, just, so we can actually sit back and focus on us instead of everybody else.
Yeah, I hear you. All right. So people want to get a hold of you. How do they do that?
They can reach us through the website at pumpsprecisionrifletraining.com. Mm-hmm. They can get a hold of us on Instagram and on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn has been a really big blessing for us. It's been really good for business on the training side. Starting to get into do some military contracting stuff with that ELR, some third party stuff.
What kind of training do you do?
So I teach anything from 22 to 2 miles and everything in between and further. Like I said, we've gone out over 4 miles with some of my clients. I've taught where we never went past 100 yards of the rimfire with kids. And I have my fellow competitor King of 2 Mile guys that'll come and take brush up wind courses with us. Learning how to use this, teaching fundamentals and wind. That's probably what I do the most of. And then a lot of low development stuff. If people want to send me their full, I don't have time to do this, I don't want to do it, they'll just send me everything. I'll do all their low development for them. We can confirm it at distance on video if they want. We can do anything they need to do when it comes to long range shooting. The only thing I do not teach F class, and I don't have a clue about it. So
I'm gonna have to get you out there.
Oh yeah, you can embarrass me all you want to, buddy.
Oh, it ain't embarrassing, man. It's
and again, same thing.
It's just like
the personality. Can I afford to do another long range shooting
time?
sport?
There's only so much time in a day.
Really, comes down to time more than anything.
Well,
the money isn't the issue; it's the time. It's
where can
I spread myself out at?
Because money requires time to make.
That's it.
and if some of that time is going to be
spending the money or
shooting,
making the money,
Anyway,
yeah.
All right, man. I appreciate you coming down.
Thank you for having us.
Very interesting. This is
I'm sure
this whole ELR thing is it's crazy for me to even consider thinking about what you guys have to go through just to make impacts. And now when people tell me, oh yeah, we went 3 for 3 at freaking 2,500, now it's gonna
that happens all the time.
Well, that's my point. It's changed my perspective of what I think when people say that.
And just like what you and Speedy were talking about on that other podcast, is we're able to pay attention to things that matter now because so many more people are interested in it. I think it takes the competition side for people to really dig down and figure out the problems. That why aren't we consistent here? Okay, well, let's address this. Oh, there was a design flaw in a cartridge, or we're not cutting our chambers right. Whatever the reason is, it doesn't matter. It matters enough now to where people are starting to put their heads together and figure out the problems. And that's why we're going to start seeing distances getting pushed further and further. You know, there's a lot of cool stuff coming down the pipeline we can't talk about really, but, you know, when it gets here, we will.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
Come on back.
I'll bring the ELR next time, and we can test every method you want to test BCs.
All right.
We can set it up. And
let's go. Let's sign off so we can go cut some rings on some bullets.
Let's do it, man.
Hey, recommendation. Who do you think I need to talk to? You get to nominate somebody.
Oh, who needs to be your next guest?
Yeah.
Aside from who you mentioned earlier?
Yeah.
I would say probably get, aside from Brian, get someone else that's making lathe turn solids. Have them talk about some of the...
You gotta give me a name. You gotta name names, man.
Dan Werner, George Fournier,
I've had
Dan
Warner.
Schmitzko.
I've had Warner on.
I would say talk to Dan Schmitzko and George Fournier.
Okay.
Get them on.
Yeah, that's interesting.
George Fournier's with Badlands. That's what this is a Badlands Super Bulldozer 2 390 grain projectile. This is what we hunt with. Lauren shoots it in competition exclusively. And this bullet's got a 510 G7 and shoots really good. And you can hunt with it. You know, this thing opens up like 400% of what it is sitting here normally. It's like, I mean, this sucker opens up a pedal like you wouldn't believe for hunting. And then Dan Schmitzko with Cutting Edge, the 400 laser, that's like the winningest bullet in ELR. Just lasers in general always shoot good.
Okay.
We've shot this bullet. This is what we hit 4,002 yards with the other day, right on the money. A lot of good bullets out there, a lot of new designs, and I'm surprised Horny's like the only ones that's dipping their toes off into making lead core ELR bullets. Sierra, they had that old 350 grain Sierra Match King that has a terrible BC, doesn't transition for crap when it goes transonic. But, you know, Horny's got the A-tip, the 390 grain A-tip, you know, and I've seen, you know, quite a few people do pretty good with that bullet. And I just kind of like to see other bullet manufacturers on here, hear what they have to say.
Yeah.
You know,
that'd be fun.
Yep.
All right, man. Good deal. I appreciate it.
You
Thank
bet.
you. And stay in touch. Keep them centered.
Keep them centered, guys.